Rhode Island is one of the American states located in the northeastern part of the country, bordered by the Atlantic Ocean to the south. At 77 kilometers long and 60 kilometers wide, it is considered the smallest state in the U.S. and also has a very low crime rate. As a result, you can find Rhode Island on the list of the safest states in America. In today's video, we travel to the state of Rhode Island in the year 1975 to examine a criminal case from that time, a case concerning the murder of a 5-year-old child by a 16-year-old teenager. If you enjoy this type of case, don't forget to like and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. On May 18, 1975, 5-year-old Jason Foreman left home with his older siblings to play with his friends. The three of them met up with some mutual friends and went to a hill located near their house. Among the group of children, Jason was younger than the rest and tired out more quickly than the others. That day, after 2 to 3 hours of playing, he told his brother and sister that he wanted to go back home and was tired of spending time with the other kids. The rest of the children still wanted to play and had no desire to return home, but they told Jason he could go back home by himself. While the children continued their game, Jason's siblings saw their younger brother from a distance as he went down the hill and reached the local fire station. This station we're talking about was a very short distance from the Foreman family's home. When Jason's brother and sister saw the 5-year-old reach the station, less than 30 meters from their front door, they were relieved and went back to their game. Meanwhile, Jason's mother, Joyce Foreman, was inside the house on the afternoon of May 18, 1975, going about her chores. She knew the children had gone to the hill together and didn't expect them to return so soon, but around 3:30, she heard Jason's laughter from the house window. Jason had made it to within a few meters of the house, so close that his mother heard his voice from the window. Unfortunately, although he got so close, he never made it home. May 18, 1975 was Joyce Foreman's 25th birthday, and her 5-year-old son disappeared on his mother's birthday. After hearing the child's voice from the window, Joyce didn't follow up on where Jason was, because she was confident that his older brother and sister were with him. Let's also keep in mind that we're talking about the 1972nd, and back then, it wasn't at all strange for young children to go out of the house alone. A few hours passed, and the other two children of the family returned home. They both expected Jason to be with their mother, but when they explained the situation to Joyce, they realized Jason hadn't come home at 3:30. It had gotten dark, and upon hearing her other two children's statements, Joyce became extremely worried. She immediately left the house for the police station and reported 5-year-old Jason Foreman missing. A case file was opened for Jason and the child was declared missing. But as we've discussed time and time again regarding missing persons cases, back then the police didn't take criminal cases that didn't involve murder very seriously and didn't conduct extensive investigations. This was even worse when the case was in a small, sparsely populated town. Unfortunately, they only conducted some superficial investigations into Jason's disappearance, and after a few months, the searches related to the case grew so cold that they were practically doing nothing to find Jason. This state of limbo for the Foreman family lasted for 7 years, from 1975, when their child went missing, until 1982, Jason's parents had no news about their child. The police gave them no answers, there was no sign of Jason, and there was nothing they could do themselves. They had only printed Jason's photo on posters and put them up on the city walls, and honestly, in my opinion, in criminal cases, nothing is worse than this uncertainty. Families who find out their child has been saved are happy. Those who lose their child experience a great sorrow, a sorrow they know they must come to terms with. They mourn and get through the grief. But people who have no news of their missing child can neither be hopeful nor hopeless. They exist in a complete void for years, and in my opinion, this feeling of uncertainty truly destroys a person. For 7 years, Jason Foreman's family had no idea what had happened to their son. During these 7 years, the father of the family turned to excessive drinking, and the mother developed severe depression. On the 15th of April, 1982, a 14-year-old paperboy named Dale Sherman ran to his father at home, panting and with a frightened look, and said, "Just now, a 2-3-year-old man named Michael Woodmansey forced me to enter his house under the pretense of delivering the newspaper. He then gave him alcohol, and when he was a little drunk, he tried to strangle him with a rope." Dale got scared and after a struggle managed to escape from Michael's grasp and get out of his house. Keep in mind that Michael's and Dale's houses were very close, to the point that Michael could see the entrance to Dale Sherman's house from his window. When Dale's father heard his son's words, he became very angry, went straight to Michael Woodmansey's house, and when the 2-3-year-old man opened the door, he beat Michael with his fists and feet. After giving the guy a thorough beating, he returned home, called the police, and reported that their neighbor had intended to strangle his 4-year-old son. A short while later, the police showed up at Dale Sherman's door, and Michael saw the police car from his window. In my opinion, the first suspicious point in the case is right here. Michael Woodmansey did not call the police. Dale Sherman had no evidence to prove that Michael wanted to strangle him. But Dale's father had beaten Michael so badly that if he had complained to the police, Dale's father might have been arrested. Michael didn't call the police because he knew they might search his house. However, when Michael saw the police in front of the Sherman family's house, he thought to himself that if he reported the fight, the police might not take Dale's statement very seriously. Michael went to the police car on his own and said that Dale Sherman's father had beaten him. The police officers, who had now heard Dale's father's statement, ignored Michael's words and thought that the strangulation and attempted murder story couldn't possibly be a lie, because a middle-aged man with no criminal record would never just go and beat up his 2-3-year-old neighbor so severely for no reason. They arrested Michael Woodmansey and brought him to the police station. In short, when they take him to the interrogation room, they realize that Michael speaks very casually about kidnapping or killing a person. This very fact leads them to think that this might not have been Michael Woodmansey's first attack. In a true shot in the dark, they tell this man that they want to search his house for further investigation. If he confesses sooner, he might receive a lighter sentence in court. At this moment, the police had no information about Michael Woodmansey's connection to the disappearance of Jason Foreman in 1975 and were just saying these things to Michael for interrogation purposes. Upon hearing these sentences from the interrogators, 2-3-year-old Michael began to confess, saying that 7 years ago he had murdered a 5-year-old boy named Jason Foreman. He said he had sexually abused Jason and stabbed him in the heart. He also claimed that when they went to his bedroom, they would find a diary. He insisted that all the information inside that diary was false and imaginary, and none of it was real. He strongly emphasized the fictional nature of the writings inside the diary. Police officers searched Michael's house and found a box on this man's wardrobe. Inside the box were a skull, forearm and thigh bones, a number of ribs and vertebrae. All the bones belonged to 5-year-old Jason Foreman and had also been meticulously and carefully cleaned of any flesh. It was clear from the bones that the killer had dismembered the victim's body and spent a lot of time cleaning the bones. Next to the box of bones was a diary, and when the police opened the notebook, they realized it was the one Michael had talked about. The content of this diary was never made public, and we do not know what was written inside it. But we know it was so horrific and catastrophic that it was used in court, and after Michael's sentence was announced, the diary was destroyed. I mean, imagine, it had such inappropriate content that they destroyed the notebook. For years we knew nothing about the contents of the diary, but in 2011 the media interviewed Jason's sister. In this interview, Jason's sister said that the original text of the diary was not given to her family, but parts of these writings were read in court. News media were not present in the courtroom. Consequently, the words Jason's sister spoke to the news in 2011 were completely new. In short, Jason's sister said that her brother's killer had written in this diary about how he dismembered Jason's body limb by limb and then, like a wild animal, ate the 5-year-old child's flesh, with the difference that animals eat to satisfy their hunger, but Michael ate human flesh simply because he enjoyed it. Jason's sister also mentioned that Michael had named his diary The Killing Guide and was entering all the writings in the notebook during the murder. When he had stabbed 5-year-old Jason Foreman in the heart and the child was dying, Michael was sitting in a corner, pen in hand, writing a moment-by-moment report of his work in the diary. At the time of Jason's murder, Michael was only 16 years old. According to the information in this diary, a few hours after the murder and dismemberment of the body, Michael put parts of his body in boiling water so that by cooking the corpse, separating the flesh from the bone would be easier for him. Unfortunately, since the only evidence they had of cannibalism was the information inside the diary, they could never charge Michael with cannibalism in court. Michael had told the police from the very beginning that the information in the diary was fictional and was not willing to confess to cannibalism. The issue that arises in the case, and which I find quite strange, is that Michael was a student in 1975. He was 16 years old and lived with his parents. We don't know anything about his mother's job, but his father was a police officer. Yes, friends, the killer's father was a police officer, so how did neither of them notice? How can a 6-year-old teenager murder a 5-year-old boy in their house by stabbing him, dismember, cook, and eat him, but his parents don't notice? How did he clean up that amount of blood? Where did he dismember the body? With what tools did he cook the child's body? Where were his parents all this time? Unfortunately, we have little information about Michael's parents. However, I find it very strange that his family didn't notice, especially when his father was a police officer. During the trial, because he cooperated with the police in confessing to the murder, he was given a reduced sentence, and instead of being convicted of first-degree murder, he was sentenced for second-degree murder. Michael Woodmansey was convicted in 1983 for the second-degree murder he committed in 1975 and received a 40-year prison sentence. I don't know why for such a crime. 40 years in prison. In early 2011, 28 years after Michael's conviction, news agencies announced that this cannibalistic killer might be released from prison on parole and return to society. Literally no one agreed with this man's release, and Jason's family was more angry about it than anyone else. When Jason's father heard the news about Michael's conditional release, he said in an interview, "If he is released, I will kill him with my own hands." Jason's sister also insisted that if Michael had not cooperated with the police, he would never have been convicted of second-degree murder, but would have received a first-degree murder verdict and would never have been granted parole. If they release him, how do we know he won't commit a crime again? Michael Woodmansey does not look at the outside world like you and me. This man is dangerous. Honestly, I don't think she was lying. Now, parole aside, what is the need for a killer with a history of pedophilia who preys on children to be released early at all? Well, I must tell you that in the state of Rhode Island, there is a law called the Good Time Law. According to this law, if prisoners behave well in prison, they can reduce their sentence by 10 days for every month they behave well. With the help of this law, Michael was able to reduce his sentence by 9 years during his 28 years of imprisonment. This means Michael's 40-year sentence had essentially become 31 years, of which he had already served 28. 3 years of his sentence remained, and since 3 years is very short compared to the original sentence, this man succeeded in filing for parole. He served all these 28 years of imprisonment in the state of Massachusetts because the police were afraid that if he were transferred to a Rhode Island prison, he would be killed in prison. No one wanted Michael to be released from prison, neither did I. That's why 2 psychiatrists working at the Rhode Island Superior Court reviewed Michael's file and announced that it would be better to transfer this man to a psychiatric hospital instead of releasing him because he is not well at all and could be dangerous to society. I mean, see, they had reached a point where they just wanted to keep Michael confined in prison or a hospital or anywhere else, just so he wouldn't return to society. The state of Rhode Island has a law that requires the prison official to inform the convict of the prisoner's health status. What does that mean? It means, unfortunately, they couldn't just transfer Michael to a psychiatric hospital. They first had to inform him and ask for his consent. In short, during this process, Michael Woodmansey's parole request was approved, and this cannibalistic killer was released from prison on the 11th of September, 2011. Immediately after his release, with the help of the diagnoses of those two psychiatrists and the cooperation of the prison official, this 53-year-old man was transferred to the Eleanor Slater Psychiatric Hospital in Rhode Island. According to the latest news we have on Michael's status, he is currently still alive, is 67 years old, and is hospitalized, and has still not returned to society. The good time law led to Michael's early release from prison, and right after this incident, the state of Rhode Island made changes to this law so they would not get involved in similar cases again. According to the changes that were made, the good time law no longer applies to prisoners arrested for murder, kidnapping, crimes against minors, and sexual assault and rape of children. At the end of this case, I must say that the noteworthy point about Michael Woodmansey is that I personally think it's impossible for such a criminal to have only two victims. The murder of Jason occurred in 1975, and the attempted murder of Dale Sherman in 2082. In my opinion, the number of Michael's victims was not two, but rather only two of them were discovered. A 6-year-old teenager who easily sexually abuses a child, kills him, practices cannibalism, and then writes a killing guide certainly won't stop with just one murder. I think that during the 7-year gap between the murder of Jason and the attempted murder of Dale, Michael harassed many children. Children who, out of fear or lack of awareness, said nothing to their parents, or parents who paid no attention to their children's words. Joyce Foreman, Jason's mother, passed away in 2000. Joyce's husband and Jason's father said about his family, "Until before the killer's release, I only visited the graves of my son and my wife with love and affection. Now I'm afraid to go to them because the horrific memories of the past have come back to life for us. There is no forgiveness or pardon in my heart, only revenge can calm me.